go. Hello, welcome to week 12, Intro to Digital Design. We are like so close to the end now. You guys are posting some impressive stuff. Everybody's obviously got the hang of what we're doing and the expectations. I love the discussion board posts and have had a lot of fun reading over those. I have a relatively quick class for us today, depending on at the back end how much feedback and sharing and questions we have. But I want to get through my list of things that I have prepared for you and kind of go through those. If you have questions, please put them in the chat. If you would like to share your movie poster for final feedback before it is due next week, also put your name in the chat. Thank you, Ryan. I see you on there. I plan to demo making a pattern, that exercise, which is in the coursework this week for you, because that one gives people trouble. And it's one of, for some reason, I love that kind of the capability that Illustrator has to make patterns, and I'm kind of obsessed with it. So I think it's a really fun thing to know how to do. So I'm going to run through that with you. I sort of have a video to share with you, but not in the same way as usual. Let me share my screen and I'm going to just jump straight into the things I have planned to share with you, which are mostly no commercial this week, all kind of on topic of what we're working on. But this came to my inbox this week, and I'll put it in the chat for you, and I will of course post the links later as well. But it is a movie poster article from Letterform Archive. I've mentioned this organization to you guys before. It is out of San Francisco, and they offer a lot of workshops, and they have a blog, they have publications, they have books. It's a really cool organization that I highly recommend signing up for their e-newsletters at the very least, just to kind of keep your finger on the pulse of what's going on out there. I thought that these Bollywood movie posters out of India definitely have a unique look that is different than what we're working towards and kind of what we've seen for movie posters here in the United States. But what I liked about them was the 2-color usage, and everything is vector. There's no photos. Here's a 3-color. I just thought these were cool. So I saved this to show you this week. Everything has an illustrated look, has a really, really like 2-color. Like, well, I guess this is 3, the green, the orange, the black on the newsprint paper. But it makes a striking visual to just limit the amount of colors that you use, keeping it simple. Silhouettes, black type, 1 color that added to that, just really kind of a cool series of posters. So I put the link in the chat for you if you guys wanted to look at this or bookmark it. This was one of the things that I wanted to share with you. Another thing that I will show you quickly, I think, is this cool little tutorial video. I've talked before about creating collections on Instagram to save, like basically like clippings and scrapbook together, like designs you like, typography you like, advertisements you like, branding you like. This is a cool one that was posted on Logo Brainy, which is one of the accounts that I follow. And I loved the custom work that he did really simply to make a custom font, a custom typeface, type solution for a logo. So I just wanted to show you guys this. It moves really quickly, but I recommend like following Logo Brainy, taking a look at some of the stuff that's out there. These are really simple modifications made to and I'm gonna let it play again, to vector text. It was a font to start with that was outlines were created using, Illustrator to create outlines. It's just a simple function, and you can then modify the font to look the way you want it to look. And I thought this was just such there's 5 letters, and it's such a dramatic difference and such a cool kind of final look that I thought it was worth showing you guys. Really cool. So I recommend it. I'm going to keep saying it over and over again. Behance, Instagram, Pinterest, like save collections of stuff. This like was one that I came across last night that is just super bizarre. It's like psychedelic Mario, but I actually kind of love the illustration, and I love the different color versions that the artist posted. And so that took me to kind of like seeing what their whole account looked like. And there's just a ton of really cool, really, you know, trippy illustrations, but the stuff is out there. You guys, you know, go check it out. Another thing that I wanted to put on your radar as you're learning Illustrator, keeping on top of so much in the new skill of Illustrator. And I've said this before also, like I've been working in Illustrator since it was invented, but it's always like doing new stuff. There's always things that I'm like, whoa, like now it can do that. Now I can do this. Look how easy this is to do now. And this is their, on the Adobe Creative Cloud YouTube channel, they have a playlist called Make It Now with Adobe Illustrator. These are 1 to 2 minute videos that show you how to do all kinds of different stuff. So I thought this was a really cool one. And just the Adobe Creative Cloud channel in general, follow Creative Cloud, follow Adobe Illustrator, follow Adobe Photoshop. There's a Make It Now with Photoshop. They're, you know, they're cool, really cool stuff. And then the last thing that I found for you guys this week was on the Adobe website under Discover. As you guys were working on your posters, some of you have asked or have just done it, and that is to add texture to your poster. Those Bollywood posters that we just looked at had a lot of kind of texture to them. Some of them to make them look more vintage, some to make it look like a cartoon drawing, or, you know, just like a sketch. So there are a ton of texture packs out there that you can download, some for free, some at a cost, and import into Illustrator so that they become part of what's available to you in Illustrator. This one, and I put the link in the chat, was on the Adobe Discover page, where there's just going to be articles and links and free stuff. So again, like there is so much out there for you guys to continue working in design, you know, besides what you do in this class. But these textures were used on these like little monster drawings. And I love when they give you stuff for free. That's like quality stuff to work with. You know, it's not just, and you can see on the before and the after of this one. I don't know if you guys can tell, but go to the website yourself. You can see when it has a texture applied to it, and it's just like a totally different look, and it's pretty cool. So that was why I wanted to show you this and encourage you, like, this is not a requirement of your poster work, of your vector work, but it is taking it to the next level. And I know some of you have worked in Illustrator before, in Photoshop before, and want a little more. So I wanted to bring that to the table for you today. And the last thing before I stop my share, just so that we can do it all in one, was thinking a little bit about finding vector art out there that you can use for your poster. And I was thinking about the idea of adding a logo for your production company, or for, you know, whoever is producing your movie. And I know one of the things that you need to think about and kind of get around is downloading a logo that's on a white background, that when you place into your photo, or you know, put in that bottom corner, has a white box behind it, or a black box, or something that keeps the background of your poster from showing through and just making it not as good. And I wanted to let you know that you can actually search for vector artwork using Google Images. And one of the cool things that Google Images has is if you click on the tools, you can choose the type of art work you're looking for to help kind of narrow it down. And a lot of times, like looking at clip art, you'll see that you can get a PNG, which is a pixelated rasterized format that has a transparent background, or this SVG. I wanted to let you guys know to keep an eye out for SVG or PDFs, because those are often vector. Those often you can open up in Illustrator, and then they're vector versions of the logo, which is really cool. And then you can just copy and paste them rather than placing them into your poster. Another thing that's really cool is this Brands of the World. I have had just like a free account on Brands of the World forever. Like, I swear, like since the 90s, which is really weird. And you can search for, they have a whole vector logo library here. All you do is you create a free account, you say agree, you download the logo, open it in Illustrator, and you can add it to your poster or whatever it is that you are creating. One thing to be careful of is these are usually designer and artist kind of uploaded. It's like a public contributed to site. So sometimes the logos might be a little wonky. Like if you search for, and sometimes they're not on here at all because they're protected, but sometimes you'll go and look and be like, who drew, you know, that logo? Because it does not look quite right. So something to just be aware of, but a really useful resource as a designer, which is what you guys are right now and what you guys are working towards. So those are all things that I thought would be super useful for you moving forward, whether you're working on your poster or these are things you just want to bookmark and put a pin in for the future. You can search for texture packs. You can search for things like Adobe Illustrator filters and just see what's out there. The stuff that you find on the Adobe website is going to be obviously work the most streamlined with uploading it into Illustrator and being able to access it. But there are a ton of third-party filters, patterns, brushes, both for Illustrator and for Photoshop for future reference. Really cool stuff out there. Just amazing, the work that people are doing. So before we get into movie poster and then demoing the patterns exercise, I wanted to show you, and I told Richard on his, as I went through and I left feedback for everybody on their movie poster work in progresses. And if you have resubmitted like a further along work in progress, I have gone back and left you additional feedback, and you guys are all welcome to do that this week. If you are further along and you want, you know, some more advice, feel free to re-upload to the week 10 and 11 submission page, and I will leave you additional feedback. But Richard is doing Blade Runner. So I just thought I would share, I have some Blade Runner stuff, and I wanted to just share how like easy and maybe like things you wouldn't think of. This is Wallace Corporation, who creates the androids that are in the movie. And I have this t-shirt that I got from Loot Crate. I don't know if you guys know Loot Crate years ago. Like my son used to have a Loot Crate subscription. It's a glow-in-the-dark t-shirt, and it's one of my favorites, just with the Wallace Corporation logo on it and some Japanese text. I have, of course, the collector's edition version of the movie. I actually have a origami unicorn in a glass jar, but it's in storage, so I couldn't get it out to show you. But there's a whole bunch of cool storyboarding, a movie poster in this Blu-ray, which I don't even know where my Blu-ray machine is, and I still have like my favorite movies out on the shelf, even though I think I have them digitally and that's how I watch them. And then this, I said I would show, this is usually in the background up against the wall. This is screen printed. We talked a little bit about screen printing last week and how each screen is, there's a screen for each color. This artist screen prints. And again, I love the limited color palette. And I think it's very, very effective, especially for films. And then this just shows like how you can take just one scene of a movie and there is so much going on. You know, granted, it's kind of like a Tokyo-esque cityscape, but some of my favorite things that are all related to what we're working on. So I wanted to show you guys that. What would you guys prefer? Do you want to share your movie posters first, or do you want to see the demo of the patterns exercise? Because that said, if you don't need help with either, you are free to go. If there's one you want to see and then go, I am taking suggestions. We have such a small class this week that I would like to be there for you guys, the faithful true. You guys have any preferences? Nope. All right, let's go with Ryan. Are you ready to share?
Yes. Want me to share the screen?
Yeah, share your screen. I will mute myself. Let us know, you know, it'll be obvious, but you can just say what movie you're doing and where, like, kind of maybe if you have any questions or where you would like feedback, go ahead and let us know that. And then I will weigh in first, but I would love it if anyone else has something to say, just, you know, raise your hand and I would love to get some peer feedback as well.
Okay, so my movie poster is Back to the Future Part 3. This is one of my top favorite ideas of having my characters stand out looking at the sunset and the horizon while holding a hoverboard. And the way I structured it is having like a gradient overlay and the behind in front of him in the background. And what I realized to work on more is like maybe shrink him down so he's front and center, but have his shadows come out and portray like the scene with the train pushing the DeLorean across the bottom image. So I'm thinking maybe if I can shrink that down and maybe expand on getting the shadows in more in depth, like more flat and depth perspective. And I also added a gradient effect for the text. So my only biggest question is like how much space needs to be filled in for the poster.
I think you're definitely headed in the right direction with reducing the size of your character. And I love the idea of like making a shadow that kind of encompasses the other part of the scene. I think if you shrink him down, that gives you the opportunity to make your title much bigger, which I think needs to happen. I think you can make Back to the Future Part 3 almost like the width of your poster and make it really prominent. Since that is, you know, what you're advertising, you can shrink up the amount of line space you have, so there's less space between the two lines of text. And then a cool thing that you can do, especially when working with gradients or any kind of crazy fill, is if you take that type and use your selection tool to just click on it once, so you've got it selected not with the cursor but with an arrow, you can create outlines under the type menu, and then that text becomes an object like we saw in that Salty video where it's actually vector art rather than a font. Then when you add the fill of your gradient, it'll add it to the whole thing or to each individual letter, like depending on how you want that to go. And you can play with your type a little bit, but I love the gradient in the type. I think it has like an Old West feel. I think that the tagline on the bottom is really good. You don't necessarily need the stars or the shooting stars. I think once you make your title a lot bigger, you're gonna everything's gonna kind of fall into place. and you'll
Mhm.
have, like, you'll feel your hierarchy will be better and things will read from top to bottom and be real strong. And you can add that, like text at the bottom with all the names and stuff if you want, or you can add the actors' names across the bottom. Just Christopher Lloyd, Michael J. Fox, like whatever you kind of think will give it that extra movie poster feel. But I conceived a lot of vector work, and I actually like how the hoverboard is a totally different color palette than the rest of the poster, because you got Old West versus like tech from the future, which is kind of fun.
Like science fiction tropes.
Yeah. Does anyone else have anything they want to contribute? If not, do you have any other questions, Ryan? And this is the time too to narrow it down to choose one poster. I know you guys had 2 designs and like came up with a lot of different ideas. Now this week, before finalizing, you should have narrowed it down to just one. And when you turn in your poster next week, you'll be just turning in one PDF, of your final artboard.
So, like you suggested, I can edit the text a little bit, the title. Okay, because I try to match the original with the color pattern, the color effect, and I thought this font type would be more appropriate for the setting of the movie.
Yeah, I like it a whole bunch. Yeah, I think it works really well. You can even, how your second line of text is longer than your first line of text. One thing that you can do if you want to even that up is just make back to the bigger, and then it can be bigger, and future part 3 can be smaller on that second line so that it evens it up. So your line lengths are the same width. And then you can make the whole thing bigger to fill the top of your poster. You can, there's a lot of things you can do. You could put future up at the top, so Back to the Future is all on one line, and then part 3 can just like, be dangling off of it. You can put it on its own line of text and like tilt it a little bit. I mean, there's a lot you can do. The one thing that I think is a must is to make it bigger.
Make the text bigger.
Yeah, it needs to have a more prominent place on your poster. It needs to just be like, it needs to be bigger.
Okay. In
my opinion. Yeah. But really great work so far.
Thank you.
It's come a long way. Thank you, Ryan, for sharing.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, Kendra, that means you are up next. So.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna screen share. Can you guys see it? I don't know. Can you guys see it? I can't hear you anymore.
Yes, we can,
okay.
We can see it.
Okay, good. Okay, so I guess we talked about making the bigger, which I did. I'm still a little bit frustrated with my vector art with the piano, not quite getting like it stretched the way that I wanted it to go. And then when I had it stretched out bigger, it was like going off of the artboard, and then I tried to create a clipping mask to go over it, and I just couldn't get it off of the, like, cut off of the artboard where it was supposed to. So I had this originally stretched out more. So I'm not sure what else to do to it, but like more input, I guess.
So I think I would still, okay, here's a couple things that you might like. One of the things that you can do with any shape that you created is, if you want it to be a little smoother, under Object Path, you can simplify your shape, and it will pop up with a dialog window where you can actually like adjust how much simpler you make it, and then you can adjust whether or not the points have a smooth junction or a more angular one, and that might make you feel happier about just kind of the shape itself.
You said object, and then
Path, and then
Path,
circle
okay.
it by path.
Okay.
So that's one thing. I still think filling the keyboard with white so that you don't see your texture pattern
Oh, okay. That's cool.
is going to make it pop, especially because it has a drop shadow, and then the drop shadow will kind of go under the whole keyboard instead of just the line of the outside of the keyboard. I think that'll make that pop. And then if you drag it bigger and it goes off the edge of the page, when you create your PDF, it'll still crop it to the artboard. So you can make a clipping mask for sure. And if you want, I think you sent me, oh no, you sent me something else. I was gonna say I could open
Oh yeah,
up.
I sent you that pattern that I was
Mhm.
trying to make that didn't work.
Yeah, if you send me your Illustrator file, I can show
Okay.
you on screen how to make a clipping mask. Basically what you want to do whenever you're making a clipping mask is the object that you want to mask. So in this case, it would be your keyboard, which is a group of shapes. It is the outside keyboard shape. It's each of the black keys. It's the lines that are dividing up the white keys. You want to select all of that and then group it so that when you use your selection tool, it selects the whole thing with one click.
Mhm.
Then you're going to draw a rectangle or a circle or a square, whatever shape you're going to use to mask it over the top of it. Make your keyboard the size you want, draw that rectangle over the top of it. Then you just make sure you have the rectangle selected and the keyboard selected, and you just go under object, clipping mask, make, and it will crop it. It'll crop it so that you just see what you want to see.
Okay.
Yeah. So I still think that is I think that would be a really good move for that, but mainly
Okay.
just adding the white to the keyboard itself is going to make a big difference for you seeing what you want to see. And then like with Ryan's poster, I would consider adding some of the other actors, Elizabeth Perkins and Robert Loggia, add their names to the bottom too,
Okay.
just to give it like even a little bit more. But really, you're there. I can see that you're working with texture. I can see that you're working with the shapes and the objects and all of the things and the color. I think moving towards, and I talked to you about this earlier, a more primary, bright and shiny kind of childlike color palette definitely helps too, rather than the more muted colors. So you can go even more primary blue if you want, and more, and a more primary red. But yeah, really, I mean, you're nearly there too, Kendra. So
Cool.
yeah.
Thank you.
Welcome. You're welcome. Okay, so let me put myself back here, center stage. Thank you guys for sharing. Oh, and I'm going to write down your names so I can not forget to give you extra credit for that. As the weeks are going by, next week is our last week in Illustrator, and every week you have gotten a written lecture, tutorials to watch, and then an exercise that kind of takes you through learning a new skill in Illustrator that you can then use on your project. But mainly, those are skills that I want you to have by the time we're done with Illustrator so that you know how to do that. Creating color swatches, working with drawing shapes with the pen tool, using the shape tool. This week it's making patterns, but it's snuck in there to also work with making with using some of the effects tools to distort and transform shapes to make other shapes. So that is snuck in there as well. I'm gonna demo just kind of step by step the making a pattern exercise, just so that because there's been a few questions about it. But what I wanted to say again is, in this online environment, it's the responsibility of the student to read that information, to watch those videos, to try those tutorials before you try the exercise, because a lot of the information that you need to know how to do the exercise is in that preceding information that's your textbook. Especially terms like symbols and motifs and things that don't sound recognizable and are not words that you use kind of in your normal vocabulary, but that are words that are used in the assignment. So let me double check my list here and make sure I've told you guys everything I want to tell you. And yeah, we're at the share my screen, work in Illustrator part of the class, which, like I've told you guys, I could do all day long because I love Illustrator. So let's see here. I have a little bit of a step. I'm already on step. I've created my 8.5 by 11 document. I've changed my unit of measurements to inches. I have my ruler tool turned on, Command or Control R to turn it off and on. And then I've saved it as patterns and my name. So this is where you are by step 4. You've got one artboard, and the first step, practical step after creating your document, is to rename your artboard Scratch. By the end of this exercise, you have something like, I don't know, 4, 6, many artboards. So that's another thing that's kind of snuck in here, is working with your artboards to create these patterns, which is the end goal of the assignment. Step 5 is using the shapes tool to create a motif, which is basically just little designs that you're going to turn into patterns. For the sake of speeding this up, I am just going to copy from a previous year's assignment where I used this vector art to create our patterns. So I'm going to use the pizza. This is motif 1, this little monster guy, motif 2, and this rabbit is motif 3. So I am essentially skipping step 5, which is where you would create 3 little designs using the shape tool, and then going in and playing with the effects that are available to warp it, to like do all kinds of crazy stuff to that shape to see how some of these work, which is what your responsibility is for step 5. We're going to skip over that so that we've got 3 different motifs, and we're going to make sure each one is a grouped selection of shapes. So I'm just using my selection tool and drag clicking over it so it's all selected. I'm going to do Command or Control G to group them. So that way they are not individual shapes any longer. And when I click on them, it selects the whole entire thing instead of just a piece of pepperoni. So that is step 6. Step 7 is when you get to make a pattern. So I'm going to select the first one, the pizza, and then go under the object menu down to pattern and say make. So this is going to open up a dialog window that gives you some options for making a pattern. I almost always, the first thing you're going to do is name it pizza slice. I'm going to actually just call this slice. And I usually like to do the brick by row so it offsets instead of like having them all lined up. But this is part of you guys just play with this. Play with this. See what happens when you change things around, see what it looks like, see if you can accomplish like what you want. And I'm going to change that to 2 to space it out a little. Everything else, I'm going to leave it. The important thing to do, and it's so hidden, up here at the top of the artboard is where you say done to save this pattern. You would think it would be in this window, but it's not. It's up here at the top. Once I hit done, it's going to make it a pattern in my, and I should have deleted the other ones from the previous. So it's going to save it to my swatches panel. Let me just do that one more time. Get rid of these guys. So there it is here. If I hover over it, you can see it says slice. That's the pattern that I've just created. And it's in my swatches panel. So it will be in there with any colors that I have, anything that I want to use. But you're going to do that 3 times so that eventually you have a swatch for each of these motifs in your swatch panel. So that is going to take us down to Step 9, we've made our second and third pattern. We should now have 3 patterns in our swatches panel, which we don't because I'm skipping through it. And the cool thing that I want to show you, and it's something that you can do to any pattern, and what we're going to do in a minute to add color to the background is if you double click it, that's how you get your options back. So if you don't like what it looks like and you want to change anything, you just double click it. That opens it back up and makes it editable. The other thing that's crazy that you can do is you can change the size of the object that you've made into a pattern. You can make it bigger or smaller or rotate it, do all kinds of weird stuff just by opening that back up and double clicking it. Just make sure you have everything selected, every part of the illustration. So that's one of the cool things. Again, you have to hit done at the top. If you just close this, it's not going to save it. But now I've got a pattern. Eventually I would have 3, but step 10, you're going to create a new artboard and call it vignettes. And this is where you're going to have the opportunity to play with the patterns that you've created. I'm going to create just 3 2-inch squares, and we've talked a lot about how to make shapes and how to center them on your artboard and how to copy and paste them. But I've got now 3, which would potentially house all 3 of my patterns. You're just going to fill, for step 9, you're going to fill each of your squares with the patterns that you created so you can see how they work or don't work. In this case, the pizza is like going way off the edge, and I might want to make more adjustments to it so that it's, it's different than it is, and it's working differently. And maybe, I want to make it smaller or make it so there are more of them. I'm going to play with it until it's the way I like it. And then that's what you do here on this step. This is step 12. You're going to do this until you have all 3 the way you like it. Then, so you would have just 2 artboards at this point. Then you're going to create a new one, and you're going to play just with your first pattern. And with this, let me get the circle tool. On this artboard, you're going to play with the different kinds of shapes that you use to fill with the pattern. And then I'm going to show you a really cool thing about, actually, let me do this. Overlap these, use the Pathfinder to make it this shape. Just play with it. You're going to have 3 of these artboards, one for pattern 1, one for pattern 2, one for pattern 3. You're going to play with the scale. You're going to play with the shape. The other cool thing you can do is make duplicates of your pattern. So if you like the pizza little, but you also like it big, make another version of it. You can duplicate the swatch and then double click on that one, rename it so that you don't have 2 with the same name. And maybe this is the one that has the bigger, pizza slice on it, or the more spaced out pizza slice. This is your area to play with that pattern and just to kind of get practice working with patterns. That said, one of the cool things that you can do, and you just keep going. You make 3 of these, then you do another artboard that's a design, and you just create a very simple illustration and apply patterns to your illustration. This video that I have here at the bottom is a quick watch about how you can change the color. As you can see here, these patterns are all just black with no color in the background. If I was to put a colored square behind it, let's see here. Let me do a colored square so we can see it and put it behind my shape. Okay, now I've added, some color to my pattern, but it's problematic. It's obviously a square instead of a circle. It's going to be hard to get a perfect fit. That's not the best way to add color to your pattern. She shows you how in this video, and I'll show you how really quick. It's pretty easy, and it's really fun. All you do is you grab your pattern off the swatches panel and drag it onto your artboard. Then it gives you, Illustrator gives you a little vector version of what your pattern looks like that you're able to change the color of the background. The easiest way to do this is to go to your layers panel, and you can see that it has a little blue indicator next to what I have selected. If I choose this, the indicator is going to change depending on what object I've selected on this layer. But we want to work with this grouping that was made by dragging the pattern off the swatches panel and onto the artboard. If I expand this, it's going to break down every little object that makes that grouping. In this case, it's a series of 11 slices of pizza plus a background. So that little square that's in the middle there is the background. And that's what we can add color to so that your pattern has a background. You want to not do it to this one, but you want to duplicate this one. So I'm just going to drag it onto the plus icon at the bottom of the screen so that I now have 2 of those. And then I am going to fill one of them with a color. So let me deselect everything. And then I'm going to choose just this one and fill it with this blue. And now I've got a blue background so that if I drag this back onto the swatches panel, I can now use the pattern with the blue background. So it doesn't look like much here. This is just a working thing. You can delete it. But now that it's here in your swatches panel, you can, you know, do whatever you want with it as far as filling objects with it. Super cool. It'll do it, you know, for however big the object is you're filling. So again, oops, sorry, I want to double click it. It is, hold on there. I'm going to drag it over here. I'm going to drag it over here and you can see blue background. And you can see it in the layers panel when you open it up. Put it everywhere. Oops. Let me do a white one again. Bring the white one over. Okay, so it's this square that you're wanting to change the color of, but you want to make sure and duplicate it so that you also have your white square, which is what holds the pattern together. And then we're just going to fill it. Let's try filling the bottom one. And let me make this one a different color. How about pink? There we go. And I'm going to drag this one over. So play with it and see what you get. Oops, missed something. Play with it and see what you get as far as creating a pattern. And see what it's like adding color to the objects. Make this one white so we don't break the pattern. But it's pretty simple. Watch the video. She gets into it really super quickly about what to do. And then this is one from a long time ago. Like I said, you're going to make some shapes and fill them and then just make some designs. But in the end, it looks like we got 7 artboards that you use as your final entry to submit. So I know that was kind of quick. The steps are all there in the exercise. There's more information, obviously, earlier this week on what it means to create a pattern and some of the vocabulary associated with creating a pattern. The other exercise this week that's talking about patterns and is a by hand. It's all by hand, and it's just, again, like working with drawing and establishing that hand-eye coordination to create some texture, which then you can also do with texture packs in Illustrator, adding them to your poster. So that's all I have for you guys this week. Next week is our last week in Illustrator. Your posters are due. You'll be learning about gradient mesh, which is a way to apply gradients into shapes and give them 3-dimensional looks. You guys will be creating a gradient mesh on a donut and a banana, and they usually come out really cool. But then that's again something that you can take and apply towards your poster designs. The week after that, which is week 14, is the week of Thanksgiving. And it is our first week in InDesign. We'll spend the last 3 weeks of class working in InDesign, and you'll have the opportunity to work with some of your previous work, placing that into InDesign. But the week 14, we will have no live session. So my plan for that week is to post a previously recorded week 14 live session from a different class, same subject matter. So you guys can get that InDesign overview that same as what I did as the overview for Photoshop and the overview for Illustrator. And then when I'm back in week 15, we will catch up if need be, but you guys should have it down by now as far as expectations and the format for the class. And obviously, if you have questions when we get to that week, I will be available via email. So that's all I have for you guys this week. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your posters. Again, if you want to upload a further along work in progress for additional feedback, feel free to do so this week. Otherwise, on Monday, your final posters are, nope, not due. They're due a week from Monday. So we have a week and a half yet to continue finalizing these and making them awesome. So you guys saw the samples from previous students, a lot of who had no experience with Illustrator. They can come out fantastic. So thank you guys. Have a great week.